Even a man who is pure in heart and says his prayers by night may become a wolf when the wolfbane blooms, and the autumn moon is bright. Some variants would say may become a werewolf when the moon is full and bright. So hi, welcome to Anchor Reviews. This is Tyler from Anchor Reviews, on episode after the credits on Anchor Reviews, and this is my review on Wolfman, the 2025 remake from Universal and Blumhouse. Now before I get into my review on this movie, I'm going to give a little backstory. I love the original movie from 1941. I've been lucky enough to see it on the big screen 3 times. I think Lon Chaney Jr. perfectly played that character. And of all the Universal monster movie characters, whether that be the Wolfman, aka Larry Talbot, he was the best written character out of all the Universal monster characters. At least he had the best character arc out of all the monster characters, the one that was most fully realized. As for the 2010 remake of The Wolfman, I'm very conflicted by this movie because I love the atmosphere and the music and the makeup work, and I thought Anthony Hopkins and Hugo Weaving were pretty good in that movie. I feel like the way they wrote Lawrence Talbot in that movie was too tragic. I feel like the pacing is way too sporadic in the theatrical cut, and the uncut version definitely has some pacing issues where it's definitely better than the theatrical version, but there are times in this movie where I'm like, can we get going already? And the revelation with the motive and the reasoning behind the other werewolf of the movie biting Lawrence to curse him to be the Wolfman, I feel like that could have been better written. But if you want to read more about the history of those movies or any of the Universal monster movies from 1923 to 2023, then I highly recommend checking out my book, 100 Years of Universal Monster Movies, available now in ebook, digital, and print. Also, check out my other book, Disney's Live-Action Movie Bombs, 1979-2019, also available in ebook, digital, and print. So anyway, Ryan Gosling came in and pitched his idea of a remake of Wolfman to be similar to the movie Nightcrawler with Jake Gyllenhaal, and the writers of Dumb Money were working on the script. However, Leigh Whannell, the writer and director of The Invisible Man, happened to be working on a script of his own in the early 2020s, and originally he was just going to direct the movie and ended up leaving, and then Ryan Gosling, who's also a producer on this movie, decided to get Derek Cianfrance to direct the movie. However, it lingered in development for years because, from what I've gathered, the studio wanted a more conventional horror film, at least Universal and Blumhouse. They wanted something more scary, while the likes of Gosling and Cianfrance, they wanted something that was more of a drama. So eventually they ended up leaving the project, and Whannell came back in to direct the movie, and the studios, I would imagine, favored him more because The Invisible Man was a big hit both financially and critically. However, Gosling still has a producer status in this movie. So in this movie, we have Blake, played by Christopher Abbott, and Charlotte, played by Julia Gardner, and they take their daughter Ginger, played by Matilda Firth, and they go up to Blake's father's home where he's pronounced dead, and they go up to his house over in Oregon. However, in the middle of the woods, there turns out to be a monster, and Blake gets infected by this monster and eventually turns into the title character of the movie. I have got to admit, it's sadly one of those classic examples of a movie starting off good, but then it goes downhill. I think it had a lot of energy in the beginning, at least with some interesting stuff happening. I'm not going to really spoil what happens, but I would say, yeah, it was that beginning of the movie, the first scene with setting up the characters, I thought was good, but then as soon as it got going and as it kept going on, it felt like it was really got winded pretty fast and definitely lost steam as it went by. With Christopher Abbott, I did recognize him from Poor Things, and I don't like that movie. I think it's over-glorified softcore porn. In his eyes, I can see kind of Lon Chaney Jr. in the eyes, at least, and there's definitely some tragic elements to this, which I feel like were fine in that regard. I wouldn't say as well done as the original Wolfman movie, but I will say that there was at least an attempt that was fairly decent with the drama with this character. And also when it came to the werewolf design in this movie, at least of the werewolves, is definitely treated like a virus, similar to at least when someone goes from human to whatever creature that the movie wants them to turn into. It's similar to a lot to The Fly, the 1980s version with Jeff Goldblum. It's interesting in some regard, but I definitely strongly prefer not just the original Wolfman makeup by Jack Pierce from the 1940s, but also Rick Baker and Dave Elzy, what they did with the Wolfman from 2010. As for Julia Gardner, I like her as an actress. I liked her in The Americans. However, I felt like she was underwritten as a character. I don't know why, I felt like this character in a way just could have been better written at ways. And the fact that she just conveniently knows how to jumpstart a car with a battery while she's established to be a journalist, it just felt like a moment in the story where it's like, oh, it's just convenient for the story to just move on, go from point A to point B. And what's bizarre too is that this movie cost $25 million to make, which is bizarre if you think about it, because the Invisible Man movie, which is a much better movie than this one, by the way, that was a lot cheaper. That cost $7 million, but this one was $25 million. And I just don't know where the money went. One of the things I did like about this movie, aside from Christopher Abbott and the beginning of the movie too, was that I did like the sound design. I did like when they're showing the perspective of what werewolves see and how they perceive things. That was interesting. It kind of felt like the equivalent of how people describe going going to ayahuasca and getting high and trippy and that. But for me, the 2025 remake of The Wolfman is definitely disappointing. I would say that there are moments where I was waiting for it to get going or at least get better. For me, I really did like that beginning of the movie, and I also did like parts in the first half of the movie, but as it went by, it just felt like kind of paint by numbers, just kind of going through the motions. It really did feel like a first draft script that they produced, and this one definitely needed a rewrite, especially for Julia Gardner's character, and also other aspects which I won't spoil in this video. In fact, the thing is, even though I'm conflicted by the 2010 remake of The Wolfman, I would much rather watch that version over this one, because at least the 2010 version is more entertaining and does feel more connected to the original movie. This one feels more like a name make, where it doesn't have any of the characters from the original Wolfman movie in this one. Basically, it's a bunch of characters that aren't characters in the original movie from 1941. So as for the 2025 remake of The Wolfman, I would give it about 2 stars out of 4. So anyway, this is Tyler from Anchor Reviews, and I hope you enjoyed this video of After the Credits on Anchor Reviews, and I hope to make a lot more in the future. Please like and subscribe.